As businesses across the nation struggle to hire and retain staff, a new potential labor pool is getting a new shake. According to reports, employers are widening their staff search to some 20 million Americans previously convicted of felonies.
Though some states make it illegal for employers to ask applicants about their criminal history during interviews, the stopgap is relatively easy to get around with a background check, preventing many former felons from even getting a second chance at a new job. But that could be changing, with the latest data from the federal government revealing there are over 10 million job openings yet to be filled. Here to discuss is editor-in-chief at The Real News and host of Working People podcast, Max Alvarez, and senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, Patrice Onwuka. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And so, Max, in the United States, what did Churchill say? We do the right thing after everything else, after we've tried everything else. And this feels like a situation where employers are, finally desperate enough that they're willing to do the humane thing and look to hire felons, despite what they've done in the past, which, as the report says, there are a lot of ways to get around the check the box law. The background check, looking for gaps in employment. All of a sudden, they need workers, so they're starting to actually look out. Do you think that this could become a permanent feature of our economy in the way that previous expansions of the labor pool that were driven by need have led to?
I was asking myself that question this morning. I don't know if I'm just in a particularly somber, cynical mood, but I guess my initial response would be no, I don't expect that. I do think that employers are taking advantage of a cheaper and more precarious and thus kind of more kind of willing to accept their crap kind of pool of laborers. But I want to be very clear up front to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Ryan, is like in one segment, this is a very good and necessary thing, right? Ex-felons, just ex-cons in general, have such a Herculean task of trying to get their lives back on track after, they've served their time, and employers being unwilling to even give them a chance plays a tremendous role there, which often, when those opportunities are denied to people who want to work, who want to kind of get back on their feet, who want to be, good citizens and contribute to society, are not given that opportunity, and that leads to increased recidivism, right? It is a really horrifying reality in this country that people with convictions have had such a struggle to find gainful employment in this country. And so it is, in one sense, a very good thing that folks like these are able to find work. I worked with people like this. 10 years ago, I was a temp at warehouses in Southern California, and like 80% of the workers with me were ex-cons. But here's the thing. Most of us were temps. Like, there was a reason why they staffed themselves with temps and ex-cons. It's because we were the ones who most desperately needed that job, and thus we were the ones who were most willing to accept the long hours, the unsafe conditions, working in like a 100-degree hot box in Southern California. We could be fired at a whim, right? I mean, we were really disposable, and that was made clear to us every day. And so I guess I just want to sort of stress that we see this in the larger picture. What really pissed me off about this article was that it just accepted as fact that there's a labor shortage. As other people, and especially labor journalists, have been saying, there is not a labor shortage. There is a good wage and benefit shortage. We have seen a mass resignation of people from low-wage jobs say that, like, we're not going to take these low wages, the crappy conditions, the uneven work schedules and stuff like that. That is what employers are trying to counteract. They're trying to basically find people who are willing to go in to these jobs without actually changing anything that is leading millions of people to say you need to do better. And that not only includes ex-convicts, but as Michael Sinato reported for The Guardian, that has included companies going straight to using the 13th Amendment to using prison labor itself. Yeah. Right? They're finding every opportunity they can to the labor market as such.
Patrice, criminal justice reform, it seems to me it's become a more important part of something conservatives, Republicans have talked about more over time. Even President Trump was interested in some aspects of it. And you also have, I see a lot of people on the right talking, throughout the pandemic about we need to reopen, we need to get people back to work, people back, get businesses open again. Is this, is there an increasing, I sense there is, so I'm interested to get your take, an increasing willingness to extend employment to the formerly incarcerated and to not be cutting off that potential pool of labor from the workplace.
I think there is. And this actually predates the pandemic. So while the article talks about kind of the pandemic created worker shortages, we actually saw unemployment starting to fall for people with criminal records well before the pandemic during the Trump administration. I think what you have in general with the tight labor market is the fact that employers are willing to drop some of the requirements that they're expecting or kind of shift their focus to those who they may not traditionally look at. 2 points on that. Number one, it is important that you do continue the conversation around criminal justice reform. We saw the First Step Act pass, and part of the First Step Act included some provisions around recidivism, ensuring people who are coming out, having served their time, are able to find employment. And part of that means being able to gain the skills while they're behind bars. The other aspect, I think, from a policy standpoint, is at the state level. Occupational licensing reform. And this is where you can bring President Obama, President Trump, and President Biden together on the same page, because they actually agree that licensure, the state certifications for workers, everyone from HVAC technicians to barbers and hairstylists, nail technicians, the regulations are onerous, and very often there's no public health safety concern. It's simply just competition. And when you look at those who have criminal backgrounds, they are particularly affected because some states outright ban people with criminal convictions from getting a license. That locks them out of a ton of opportunities. So it's encouraging when I see at the state and federal level efforts towards that. Do I want to say that the pandemic is also a great way of getting more folks with criminal backgrounds to work? I don't want to say that, but I do think that's part of what's going on here. Yeah, and I want to see states continue to do these reforms.
And Max, to pick up on something you were saying about the labor shortage, I think if you think about it on a micro level, like let's say you need a plumber to come over to your house, and you're willing to pay $20 to a plumber to come by and work on whatever your problem is. You call all 10 plumbers in your neighborhood, and each one of them is like, no, I'm not coming over to your house for $20. And then you start telling everybody, wow, well, there's a huge plumber shortage out there. This is just absolutely outrageous. People would laugh at you, but yet somehow when it gets taken out to the macro scale, that complaint gets taken seriously. But to also pick up on something Patrice said, I'd like to get your take on this. How do the conditions that are placed on ex-cons when it comes to both probation and parole play into this, play into their difficulty in finding work?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like one immediate thing that kind of comes to mind that was cited in this article was like, if people have like nightly curfews or stuff like that, right, that limits their ability on what shifts they're able to take, depending on the location of their job. If it's near, I think another thing the article mentions, if it's near a medical dispensary or something like that, they can't work there, right? So there are there is a web of restrictions that are also placed on people with criminal convictions as they're trying to just locate a place where they can apply in the first place. Then they enter that sort of gauntlet of all the other ways that they're going to be discriminated against because of their prior convictions. But to jump back to, what you were asking before, Ryan, to make this even more of a ridiculous situation, because I think we really need to call it out for what it is. We really need to kind of call BS on this sort of business class narrative about what the labor shortage is, where it's coming from, and who's responsible for it, right? A lot of airtime on mainstream media has gone to people who have been indefatigably wrong about those questions, right? People who, like this ghoulish chorus of Chamber of Commerce affiliated people who went on mainstream media to say that workers were lazy and getting fat off extended unemployment benefits, and that's why they weren't going to work. Then we saw over the summer that states that cut those extended unemployment benefits early did not see an increased rise in filling those jobs. In fact, in most states, that was less of a growth than in states that kept those unemployment benefits. Here's another thing to add. When we think about this quote unquote labor shortage, right? People imagine that micro level that you're talking about, Ryan. They're thinking, oh, a mom and pop employer is struggling to find people who are willing to work. In a lot of cases around the country, what in fact is the problem is that companies that have been seeing record profits and record demand over the pandemic are trying to find kind of workers who will kind of take the additional overtime that they're making everyone take, who will like really just kind of crank themselves out day in and day out to meet this increased demand. That was the case at Frito-Lay, right? That was that had a major strike over the summer. It's the case with Warrior Met Coal. That mine has become more productive than ever, and yet the company is trying to kind of ice out the union, trying to bring in scabs. The distillery workers in Kentucky. There's so many businesses here that are not facing kind of a shortage in order that they need to fill in order to survive. They are trying to find people who will take the least amount of pay and kind of the least amount of job security as possible so they can keep raking in these major profits.
Well, let me just say that there's another elephant in the room, and it's going to challenge a little bit of what Max was talking about. Independent contracting is actually hugely popular right now. Over 57 million people in this country have done some sort of freelance work in the past year. And it's because they don't want to be workers. They don't want to be traditional W-2 employees. They actually want to be 1099. They want to control their own schedule. They're not looking for benefits. They're not looking for a union boss to negotiate their wages for them. They're actually looking for the freedom and the flexibility to determine what's best for them. We're talking about 40% of women who are freelancers. We're talking about people, and I'm not just going to the gig economy and Uber drivers. There are people who are bilingual translators who make their own businesses and have multiple clients. And it's unfortunate that here in Washington and across the country, we're seeing this push for unionization, and we're seeing a push against independent contracting and entrepreneurship because everybody wants to work for a company and be a W-2 employee. So when we think about the worker shortages, I also think we need to make room for the fact that companies may say, well, you know what, maybe independent contractors are a better position for us, and individuals who may have left the workforce, maybe they're retirees, which is a big driver of some of the worker shortage we're seeing as well.
Yeah.
Retirees are saying, I don't want to work for a company. I don't want to have a union boss, by the way. I actually just want to be my own boss and make my own schedule. And that may not require overtime. That may mean just 20 hours of time on my schedule. So there's a huge part of this conversation that I think is, I hope not intentionally being left out, but something that is on the minds of many people.
Patrice and Max, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
More Rising right after this.